Hello,
Abigail, don't do that, Abby. I didn't say it was your time to speak yet, trad wife. You're not allowed. Okay, now you can speak.
Crew, and welcome to today's video where we're going to be talking about 5 ways to be a real American this July 4th.
Yeah, I'm not, so as I said this before, but I'll reiterate it for the segment. I'm not celebrating July 4th because I am not literally Adolf Hitler. I'm not a real American otherwise, true. Did she actually get top surgery? Did Abby Shapiro get a breast reduction? That happened, right? I feel like the internet keeps me constantly appraised of her physical, like, state because people are insanely horny for her.
If you are new to my channel, here we talk about classic living and traditional values, and I would love if you would consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. And if you haven't...
It is amazing how much the Abby Shapiro psyop failed. 4,000 views on this, and it released a few days ago, too. That is incredible. Remember how some of her videos would get hundreds of thousands of views because she would advertise them like crazy? Let me see if I can find... Excuse me. Is there one here? Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't look like it. These all look like fairly authentic view counts. I guess the Daily Wire fundraising, or sorry, like subsidization effort ran out. Let's be real, her videos are not being viewed for her content. I'm sure there are some like trad wifey types who like these videos. Excuse me. Yeah, remember this? Why you should dress modestly, 10 things you should know before becoming a wife. And these videos would all have like an insane like to dislike ratio. God, that was funny. God. Well, you think that's an awkward conversation with her and Ben? Like Ben explains to her, like, you're just not profitable anymore. You know?
haven't already subscribed to my Substack newsletter, you will get access to a ton of exclusive content, including my book club, my exclusive weekly articles, and my podcast. So in today's video, I want to talk about how you can celebrate this July 4th as a real American. So what do I mean when I say a real American? Well, many of my subscribers are American citizens, but being an American citizen doesn't actually mean that you are a true American in the sense that you love this country and you appreciate what it stands for.
This is from the same group of people who think that what a woman or a man is purely biological. Isn't it interesting how they will rapidly alternate between highly technical definitions and like more like poetic alliterative descriptions depending on what's convenient for them? So technically an American is just an American citizen and that's it, you know. And they'll be like, well, actually when I say woman, what I mean is that you're gametes or this or that. But then in reality, they're like, well, actually, being an American is more of a philosophical and spiritual thing than being a, you know.
Many Americans nowadays, also known as leftists, want to tear down this country, and they think that that is patriotic. They think that patriotism means tearing down the basis that this country is built on, which is what makes it so amazing. The foundations of America are what make it such a beautiful and wonderful country.
What foundations? What foundations that you're not going to name do leftists want to tear down that make America so beautiful? I'm curious.
Country. So today I want to talk about 5 ways that you can celebrate on July 4th
as
a real American. So let's get into it. The first way to be a real American is to stop apologizing for this country. What this country stands for and the foundations on which it was built are incredible things.
What foundations? What foundations are you referring to, Abby Shapiro? Out of curiosity, what foundations are you referring to?
We live in a country that was built on freedom and liberty. And even though there are things in our past that...
Is that what people complain about? Freedom and liberty? Is that what the leftists are like? We have too much freedom. We have too much liberty. Is that stuff they chant about?
We're not proud of. We can say that this country and what it was trying to accomplish, we are proud of.
Wait.
Which it was built are incredible things. We live in a country that was built on freedom and liberty. And even though there are things in our past that we're not proud of, we can say that this country and what it was trying to accomplish, we are proud of.
Wait, what this country was trying to accomplish in the things that we did that we're not proud of? Are you saying we should celebrate us doing slavery and the native genocide because it was like, oh, oopsie whoopsie? Wait, was this? I can't tell if this is an implicit defense for slavery. This actually sounds like a euphemized version of the utilitarian arguments that people would do for slavery, where it's like, oh, sure, like slavery wasn't good, but it was the best they could do at the time. You know, like they needed slavery because it was the only way to sustain like the Confederate or like the Southern economy, and is yeah, they needed it. You know, so like yeah, it wasn't great, but like we were striving towards something good. That's a pretty common bit of Confederate apologia. It's also really dumb. Yeah.
So I think it's really important that we stop apologizing for America. America is not a bad place to live. It's not a bad country. It's an incredible place to live. It's an incredible country. And I'm done apologizing for it. If you think that loving your country, being patriotic for your country, means that you're ignoring any of the problems it might have had, then you're wrong. You can love something and say, I'm really proud to be an American, without constantly having to sit there and apologize for the problems that it has had and that it currently has.
Wait, so you can acknowledge the problems that it has, but you can't apologize for it? Wait, so you're allowed to acknowledge that America still has problems, but you can't do anything about it? Or like literally you just can't apologize? Like you can still protest against them as long as you're not apologizing? I'm curious. What does that mean? Yeah, slavery was bad, but I'm not sorry. I'm tired of apologizing for slavery. It's been 5,000 years. Get over it.
The fact that we are constantly having to apologize alongside being proud of something is ridiculous. Number 2 is go shooting.
It is. Oh, hold on. That stupid thought aside, isn't it interesting how so much of conservative politics just seems to be outrage at the idea of having to apologize when nobody asked them to apologize. Apology in this case is like a euphemistic replacement for acknowledge that anything is wrong at all, you know? They feel the archetypal conservative feels emasculated when they tie their identity to a group and then it is pointed out to them that that group has problems with it, you know? Because the conservative, but necessarily an authoritarian and conformist mind state, they tie themselves to their race, their country. So any attack on either of those things becomes an attack against them, and they treat it as such.
Celebrate the Second Amendment. We are very blessed to live in a country that arms its citizens. The fact that we are able to have that Second Amendment, to own guns, so that the government isn't the only one with those weapons, is an amazing thing. If you want to hear more about this, actually, I would recommend checking out JP Sears' channel. He recently did a video where he apologized for previously being in favor of gun control and now being pro-gun. And I think he really describes
what happened to not apologizing? Okay.
Why it's so important that we as citizens have access to weapons. But also, outside of the really practical reasons why we should have guns, why citizens need to be armed, which again, check out his video on that. I'll link it in the description box below. It's really, really good. Shooting is a sport. Shooting is fun. It's something that you can do as a family. You can go to the shooting range and learn how to shoot well. It's also a really important thing for self-defense. As a woman, I think it's a really important way for me to defend myself, given that I will never be as strong as a man. So having access to a gun.
Have you ever managed to successfully defend yourself against an attack with a firearm? She's got to throw that in there for all the Stepford wives watching, who are like, yes, that's true. I am worse than men. The NRA has actually been pretty successful in marketing guns to women lately on this whole like learn to defend yourself kick bullshit. It's really funny because like conservative women will be like, yeah, dude, rape happens all the time, and I as a woman need to protect myself. And then they'll fight aggressively against anything done to make rape less common. You know, like they'll be anti-Me Too. They'll be incredibly like cynical or distrustful whenever rape victims come forward. They will attack anyone who points out that toxic masculinity has a role in perpetuating rape culture. They hate the term rape culture. And then they'll be like, oh, the world's dangerous, you know? Gotta keep it going. Yeah, especially now that rape means that you have to carry a child to term in like half of states now, too.
gun is something that allows me to protect myself.
That's the next wave of NRA stuff right there. Keep a gun on you so that someone doesn't force you to be a mother.
So as a real American, we should celebrate our Second Amendment. We should understand why it's so important that American citizens can own guns and own them responsibly, instead of ignoring how important this amendment is. Number 3 is post one of your beliefs on Twitter. Now,
What? Okay. This is silly. What are you talking about? I wanted July 4th tips. Go to a gun range, post on Twitter, and what was the other one? What was the other one? I never. Yeah, don't say how. Yeah, this is dumb. Get out of here, Abby. Get out. I want more. I want more, Abby. I do not want to watch fashion or anything having to do with abortion, motherhood, or breastfeeding. Which does limit me somewhat here. Ladies, sex before marriage is ruining your life. Sure.
Hello, Classic Crew, and welcome to today's video, where we're going to be talking about why our modern approach to sex is actually way worse for women. If you are new to my channel, here we talk about classic living and traditional values. And I would love if you would consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell, as well as heading over to my Substack newsletter, where you can join our amazing community of women and get access to a ton of exclusive content, including my book club, my podcast, and exclusive weekly articles.
No chance.
So for my Classically Abby book club over on my Substack, we recently read a book called Cheap Sex by Mark Regnerus, who's a sociologist. And it was really eye-opening. I highly recommend picking it up if you are interested in reading it, because it is fantastic. And I wanted to hit on some of the points that he talks about. So he talks a lot about how sex has become economically cheap in our day and age, where it's just easy access.
Holy shit, dude. It's a fucking bear market. Buyer's market. Let's go. Absolutely. That's the America I'm looking for. Cheap gas, cheap hot dogs, cheap hot dog buns, cheap sex. Woo!
From both a physical perspective,
yeah, sex is down. Bye.
You can have sex in really any form you want without working very hard for it. And what that has done to our society, and especially to women. So today, I really want to talk about how our attitude towards sex as women is not better for women in the long run. It's actually much, much worse. So let's get into today's video. Let's start off by talking about how sex became cheap. So really, the first thing—
I'll tell the actual answer, because she's going to fuck it up. Probably. Maybe she won't. Basic things. First of all, here are the main things that made sex expensive in the way that she's using it. First of all, contraception and abortion wasn't really available. When the birth control pill became available, that made it a lot easier to fuck casually, because it being not just relying on like the dude to wear a condom or whatever. Number 2 is female financial independence. Women for the longest time have basically just kind of relied on having a man to support them. Women weren't even legally allowed to open their own bank accounts until like the 70s or something, like, or banks were allowed to not let women open their bank accounts or some shit. There's a ton of discrimination against women when it came to like economic independence. So women had to shack up with dudes basically just for security. Now women are not quite at par, but more on par with men in terms of income and net worth. And obviously birth control is easier to get a hold of. Well, for now. No.
Thing that made sex cheap was the advent of birth control.
Okay.
Before birth control existed, sex and conception were inherently linked. There were ways to get around it, sure. You could absolutely have sex and not get pregnant, but there was always a risk that you would get pregnant. And with that in mind, it meant that you had to be more responsible.
Still the case with birth control. It's not 100%.
About who you had sex with and when you had sex. Or at least you should have been, because if you weren't, then you could get pregnant, and that could have consequences that perhaps you didn't want to happen.
What about other kinds of sex? What about oral sex or anal or heavy petting or whatever else? Like you can hook up with someone and not have like PIV sex pretty easily. Like you can there's plenty you can do.
With the advent of birth control, physical pleasure became entirely separate from the consequence of that physical pleasure.
Thank God.
Sex.
Wait, wouldn't that mean it's no longer the consequence of that physical pleasure? Like, that's kind of tautological. Like, you're saying, like, with this thing, these two things became separate from these two things. Like, yeah, wouldn't that be the point? That's the goal of birth control. To separate the pleasure from the possibility of siring children.
Became something totally separate than having a baby, which actually was not a good thing. It meant that sex became so much more about just stimulation than it did about the connection you were having with that other person.
Nope, not related even slightly, remotely. First of all, again, we're only acknowledging PIV sex here, which is a pretty limited way of thinking of sexual interactions. I have no idea how anyone could think that making sex more about mutual pleasure decreases the level of intimacy and connection between the people involved in it. Treating sex like some kind of mechanical, rote, like, birthing ritual is the most dehumanizing, depersonifying thing that I can think of. Yeah, I just don't think that connects. I mean, I guess you could be making the argument that now sex isn't as much about, like, immediately committing to spending the rest of your life with somebody. I guess that's true. I'm okay with that, though. That is a level of commitment that I'm okay with not having tied to putting my dick in someone necessarily, you know.
And recognizing that that person could be the father of your children. Now, when you separate sex from conception, the problem is that in people's minds, it's an unnatural result of sex to get pregnant, which is exactly the opposite of the truth, right? We know that sex and pregnancy are absolutely linked.
Not unnatural, just unlikely. I've never heard anyone say it's unnatural to get pregnant from having PIV sex. I've never heard that in my life. An undesired outcome, perhaps, an unlikely outcome, but not an unnatural outcome. Like, we drive cars around. Getting in a car accident is a natural consequence of driving a car. It's an unlikely and undesired one, but that doesn't mean it's unnatural, you know? Okay.
But birth control gives you the perception that the worst outcome of sex, the most unnatural outcome of sex.
What is this unnatural thing? What is this? Nobody says this.
Is pregnancy. And when that's the case, not only do people feel like pregnancy is now a choice, that choice.
Well, that's kind of mask off, isn't it? So you would prefer pregnancy isn't a choice? Is that what you would prefer? I guess the conservatives are pretty straightforward about the fact that they want their women barefoot and pregnant, but usually, like, they're a little more indirect about it. Yeah, I think a choice in that would be cool. You know.
This can lead to abortions because, oh, well, if this is an unnatural result of sex,
nobody says it's unnatural,
then I shouldn't have to deal with it, and I don't want to deal with the consequences. Now, I'm not.
Well, that has nothing to do with it being unnatural, just undesired. That's a different thing. It's a different thing altogether.
Somebody who believes that sex is only for the purpose of having a child. Sex is about intimacy for a couple. It makes a couple come together closer and express their emotional feelings for each other in a physical way. It's a beautiful way to express our love for one another and come closer together as couples. But there's also always an understanding that it can lead to pregnancy. Even birth control is never 100% effective. And because of that, it should never be treated lightly, even though in 99% of cases, or 96% of cases for most birth controls, you won't get pregnant. The next part of...
Oh, okay. Okay. Sure. If people want to have sex and have a baby, they can just not take birth control. Nobody's being limited here. You're not losing the ability to do anything. Nothing is being lost here. And I can't believe I didn't immediately catch this, but she just indicated that access to birth control makes people more likely to have abortions because it facilitates a mindset where people think the pregnancy is unnatural. Obviously, this is the opposite of what is real. In reality, access to contraception decreases abortions by a good amount. We're also having less sex than we used to. No sex is on the rise from 19 to 23% over the past what is that, 30 years, weekly or more sex dropping, monthly sex going up a little bit. Overall trend is lower. Incel nation. So yeah, it's just yeah, basically everything she said there was wrong.
The puzzle is the rise of the pure relationship over the traditional relationship. Anthony Giddens, who is the rise of the pure relationship over the traditional relationship. Anthony Giddens, who is another sociologist that Mark Regnerus references quite a bit in Cheap Sex, came up with this theory of the pure relationship. So Giddens' argument about the pure relationship is that nowadays we have an understanding of relationships that's pretty self-absorbed and me based. Essentially, what Anthony Giddens argues is that the pure relationship exists only to meet the partner's needs, and as soon as those needs are met, the relationship can end. Couples are together because of love or because of sexual fulfillment.
Wait, what? Wait, what? Wait, you get in a relationship to meet someone's needs, then you leave? What? If somebody in a relationship is meeting your needs, wouldn't you want to stay in that relationship? I don't think people have, like, life task boxes that they check off, and it's like, oh, I've done it. I feel happy about myself. Okay, got what I wanted, and then they end the relationship. What? Also, personally, I think it's okay if you're not happy with your relationship, you can end the relationship. You know, if it's selfish to not want to spend your life with someone you don't love, then yeah, sure, I'm okay with that.
But they're not together because of tradition or duty. And because
yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with not spending my life attached to someone because of duty. Jesus. Tradition. Oh, sorry, love. We hate each other, but tradition dictates that we. Yeah, okay.
Relationships are really seen as a way for you to find yourself. They're very short-lived. The phrase pure relationship sounds positive. It sounds like it's pure. It's not based on anything else. But marriages and relationships are based on commitments. They're based on traditions and duties to one another and to your children. And it's not just about what am I getting today?
Well, if you have children, then obviously there are additional considerations to be taken. But if you don't have children, then it really is just about you too, isn't it? Why would tradition... Isn't it? It's very funny, isn't it? Remember how in the last video she was screeching about how America is all about freedom and liberty? But then the moment you actually ask a conservative about anything, they're the most anti-freedom people in the fucking universe. Like, in every possible way, in every standard, economically, socially, politically, sociologically, every time they're deeply authoritarian, not valuing happiness, but instead valuing, like, the will of dead men and tradition, you know? Very, very weird.
Am I happy today? Do I feel fulfilled today by you? Sometimes relationships are about putting in hard work and recognizing that you need to fight for what you built together.
People do that in modern relationships with birth control. This is a ubiquitous thing. A lot of people who are in shitty marriages just give up too. Like, people who are bound together by social expectation, tradition, or whatever else, sometimes they'll be married and they'll have kids and they'll just give up on having a good relationship with each other, and they'll just be like miserable roommates, you know, that share a bed. Probably some people in chat whose parents are like that.
And for the family that you have. And traditional relationships do that. Traditional relationships recognize that there's a lot more to a relationship than just, I loved you yesterday, but I don't love you today, so now it's over.
Is that, who thinks that? What, sure, yes, all relationships that are not grounded by tradition end the nanosecond somebody briefly has like a neuron fire in their head that tells them they're unhappy.
As relationships became more pure and less traditional, we see a decline in marriage. We see a rise in divorce, and we see sex treated as...
Well, maybe marriage sucks. Maybe people are divorcing because that's a more authentic representation of what they want to do with their lives, or freedom.
As another path to fulfillment, as opposed to something that is engaged in for the intimacy of a couple within a traditional relationship.
So, okay, The irrationality of her argument is very clear right here. Listen to this.
As another path to fulfillment, and we see a decline in marriage. We see a rise in divorce, and we see sex treated as another path to fulfillment as opposed to something that is engaged in for the intimacy of a couple.
Right there, nothing that she said here is contradictory. Sex can be fulfilling and intimate for a couple. I know plenty of young, hip, Zoomer sex people, and they do in fact have sex with their partners in an intimate fashion. That is a thing that they do, you know. But then she realizes, once she's midway through the sentence, that she hasn't actually made the distinction yet. So then,
within a traditional relationship.
So that right there is logically invalid because she's begging the question. She's saying, like, nowadays, sex is being done to make people happy, but it used to be done to make people happy in a traditional way. That's essentially what she just said. It doesn't mean anything.
So with those two things in mind, that leads us to number 3. Getting married has become less and less easy to do. Men can have access to sex with absolutely no problem. Men don't have to wait to have sex with someone because women don't feel like the sex that they are having needs to be with someone who will support them, raise children with them, or marry them. So sex is economically cheap. Men are able to have sex incredibly easily or access pornography on the internet, and they don't need to wait to have sex. And in doing so, better themselves, have a good career in place so they can support a family. Men are...
Wait, I'm sorry. Did she just say that having casual sex means that you're not going to better yourself and also means you'll get a better job? How does that work exactly? What? Is she a believer of like the semen power theory? Like if you don't nut enough, like your power level will rise and you'll get like a good job. And what the fuck? She literally just said that if you don't have casual sex, you will be driven to get a better job so you can support a family. What the fuck is the relationship there?
Really let off the hook, and women are the ones who are paying the price. Women want to be married. This isn't a question of whether or not women want to be married.
Projecting.
Women want to be married. And when we have economically cheapened sex so that it's just available at any time to anyone, it makes it so that it is a lot harder to get married.
Damn, sucks to suck. It's true. I'm out there on Tinder. I'm out there on Capitol Hill. I'm walking around. People are throwing themselves at me. These bitches, they ask for my hand in marriage. I say, please finish handing me my boba tea.
Because now it's not just, oh, men are going to get married to have sex and have a family. Men now have to come to a conclusion that the relationship they are in is pure enough for it to lead to marriage.
Oh no. People having to exercise some standard of legitimacy and decency to a relationship before marrying. She literally just said it's better for people to want to marry just so they can get to have sex, as opposed to them having the opportunity to really decide whether a relationship is worth the marriage. Like, this is exactly what leads to the higher divorce rate. This is exactly what leads to people like living miserable lives and being terrible parents.
Now, the really sad thing is number 4. The women who want to wait till marriage are now in a competition with the women who don't. And when I say women who don't want to wait until marriage, I really think we're talking about an empowerment lie that women have bought into from a feminist narrative that says that they will enjoy their lives more if they have sex outside of marriage. But
the feminist lie that you might enjoy your life more if you have sex outside of marriage. Ladies, you might feel like you're having a good time when you're getting mating press pounded into your mattress by a 6'3" Swedish dude who you met at the club. You know, as your 7th orgasm racks your body, and you come so hard that you... Not even the 4th of July yet. That you shit all over yourself. That was what I was going to say? Let's just say that. You know, just remember, Abby Shapiro warned you, you're not actually having a good time.
The fact of the matter is, women do not find sexual satisfaction having sex outside of marriage, even though that's what they're told that they will do. And
really? Well, this is... Okay. I guess that's a them problem then. It's dude, they always female like conservative womanhood channels always do this shit where they'll throw out a bunch of unconvincing arguments and then they'll be like, "Listen guys, I'm dead serious. This is a truth no one can deny. Women all biologically just really 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 like being told to not speak in public unless spoken to." Like they'll just hit you with some wild projection out of nowhere. Whatever gets Abby wet is her business, but you know, she really shouldn't be projecting this and grooming her younger viewers with this behavior.
They will have a better sex life outside of marriage. Women don't enjoy sex in the same way when they're not married because it's unstable and they don't know that it's going to last.
If that was the case, wouldn't that also refer to men? Also, what if they're fine with it just being what? Also, couldn't you say this about literally any kind of social interaction whatsoever? It's not stable outside of marriage? Like marriages are stable? This fails on every level.
And even though it can be sexually fun, pleasurable for a short time, it's not sexually satisfactory in the long run. So what ends up happening is you have women who want to wait being put in a position of having to consider their options. Can they wait? Will they be able to find a guy who's willing to wait for them? Because now that sex is so cheap, he can go anywhere. He doesn't have to wait for you. And now
this is interesting. This is actually the first time that I've ever seen the opposite of the cock carousel. This is the pussy carousel. This is the cunt carousel right here. Her argument is that guys are just going to fuck around with a bunch of like 21-year-old like college students. And then when they're ready to settle down, they'll like find someone, and that the woman will be like the beta bucks. This is femcel shit, dude. This is so funny. And also completely true. That is my life plan. I do intend on spending the first third to half of my life, railing college students until I finally graduate into, entering the commune multi-stage marriage harem, which will be composed of 73 people of all sexes and genders, which is actually the real traditional relationship standard.
Now, all of these people who complain that there's too much emphasis put on beauty in our society.
Trans girl harem? No. I have no interest in having trans women in my harems. Not because they're not women or anything else, pretty, whatever. It's because they're very annoying on Twitter. I'm not dealing with that. Not a chance, not in the world. Because we'll have to follow each other, and I'm going to wake up and I'm going to check my Twitter feed, and there's going to be some insane bullshit. No, sorry. Not worth it.
Society, and that everyone needs to look perfect. Well, it makes sense. This is why, number 5, because sex is now mostly about physical pleasure. It's not about emotional intimacy between a couple. It's cheap, it's easy to access. And when sex is about physical pleasure and not about emotional intimacy, then of course it's going to be based off looks more than anything else. When sex is first and foremost about physical pleasure for men and
what if it's based on whether or not she is in fact the glizzy gulper? What if you value skill over looks? Okay? That's the real, you know that a guy is actually a true lay epic gentle sir if he's not out here, like soy facing over every 9.5 that walks down the street, but is actually just on FetLife, schizo posting for 3 hours every day, looking for the most deep throat talented person in the tri-state area. That's the sign of a real warrior for sex.
And women, more than a long-lasting relationship that lasts for both sides, then sexual attractiveness becomes the most important thing, not the relationship that spurs a beautiful sex life. And
well, wouldn't that be the goal of casual sex? Like she's saying, casual sex is bad because it's only about how awesome it feels and how fucking good it feels. But it's not about having to form a committed lifelong relationship with that person. Oh no. That's horrible.
I want to touch on this point, which is number 6. Because marriage is now so much harder to attain, because marriage is not treated as something that people need. It's treated as something that...
Yeah. very freedom loving. Now that this thing is something that people opt into and of their own choice rather than an obligatory, unavoidable fact of life that women will be socially ostracized for not participating in.
That people can do if they want. It's not considered the building block of a family or the building block of a relationship. Women are getting married.
It is absolutely still considered the building block of a family. A marriage is still absolutely considered that. 100%. Yeah.
Older. It's harder and harder to meet somebody, and it's harder and harder to get married. So as women are waiting longer and longer to get married, they're also waiting longer and longer to have children. And fertility now becomes an issue because women are getting married older and older. Instead of thinking about fertility, women are looking for confluent love, pure relationships, this fulfillment that they think will come out of marriage, but is really based on their self-absorbed finding themselves mentality. And the men that they want to marry are able to avoid making this commitment until much later down the line as well.
I can't believe this is literally just femcel shit. This is incredible. I didn't think I'd get this from Abby Shapiro. You know? That it's genuinely very interesting.
And then all of a sudden, they're 35 and having to use IVF to get pregnant because getting pregnant as you get older is more difficult. All of this is a testament to the fact that marriage has...
Listen, okay, if you're like 23 and you want to get married and you're a chick, it's not hard to. I'm sorry, I'll say it. If you want to, you can. If you have trouble finding a nice guy to do it with, well, that's always been the case. If you think it's hard to find a nice guy to marry, that's always been the case. That's not new, you know? The difference is you used to not have a choice. There was just some shit guy that you had to settle for right out of high school. That's it. So, if you want to get married, go for it. I have friends who have gotten married at 20 or whatever. Fucking go for it. Yeah, do whatever. I think it's wild to commit to a lifelong relationship when your fucking prefrontal cortex is still developing. But if it makes you happy, if you think it's good for you, then go for it. You can find it. Also, just if you want to be a manipulative piece of shit about it and not do sex before marriage, just there are so many fucking rural Midwest guys out there who are so desperate for pussy they'll sign any contract, okay? You can find them, all right? Just find a guy, okay, in high school, meet, flirt with him for a while. You're in college, you invite him over to your dorm to study, you're not wearing any panties, but you're wearing a skirt. And you're like, ooh, I wish I was married. And you're on your back on the bed, waving your legs around. He's doing the awooga eyes between your legs, and you're pretending that you don't know what you're doing. You can get a guy to marry you. I don't think this is ethical, but
become something an elite few people do because they want to, instead of a necessary...
Isn't that pedophilic? They're in college.
Right. Part of starting a family. And as you guys know, I think marriage is incredibly important, and I think it's one of the most beautiful things that people can do. But without that building block, we are seeing...
You said high school? Dude, listen, I said you're in high school, then you graduate, get to college. I said flirt with them in high school, and then when you're in college, invite them to your dorm. What, your high school dorm? Do you think we're in England? Do you think we're in a boarding school in England? Oi, that bed's looking awfully pretty. Got to invite her over to your England housing dorm. Oi! Ye gash is looking mighty soggy. Fuck.
Women suffer in so many ways. Less physical satisfaction, having sex with men that they probably wouldn't want to have sex with but feel pressure to because if they want to enter into a real relationship, a lot of men are not willing to do so unless they have sex. True. Waiting longer and longer to get married and allowing sex to...
Dude, I would never in a million billion years would I marry someone without fucking them first. No shot. Dude, sex is a pretty big part of a relationship if you're into that sort of thing. If you're ace, whatever. But if you're into sex, that's a pretty big thing. What if they're super weird, dude? There are a lot... There's a whole subreddit called Dead Bedrooms where it's people bemoaning their dead sex life with their spouse. And it's a pretty common thing, Because, a common thing will be a chick will be like, ah, tee-hee, I can't wait to feel your meat stick destroy my insides and rearrange my guts, but we have to be married first. And then, you get married. you get married, and and then it's always they have a headache, you know? They have like a headache for the rest of their life. Uh, you know? You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, it sucks. Sucks for them. Half of chat is virgins. No, we don't. Look, all I'm saying is people who think it's unethical to have sex before marriage, not always, but probably, are gonna be weird about sex after you start having it, too. You know, I think it's pretty weird. Like, to me, not believing it's moral to have sex before marriage, that's a weird sex attitude. The weird sex attitude is going to carry over into the bedroom.
To be economically cheap, and then struggling with fertility down the line. So the empowerment narrative that, oh, we should all be having as much sex as possible before we're married, outside of marriage, and that's really empowering. Who is it empowering? At the end of the day...
Well, it's freedom. It's freedom. It's people doing what they want. That's... Yeah.
It gives over much more power to men. Men are the ones who get to now have access to something that they didn't have.
This literally is femcel. It's literally just female dating strategy. I love being free. I love it. Doesn't that contradict the freaky church girl narrative? Okay, the freaky church girl narrative is, let's be real. First of all, the freaky church girl narrative is about chicks who put out before getting married. The freaky church girl archetype is like getting railed in her ass, like well before she ever touches a marriage document. So that's not really applicable here. But a lot of it is also fetish cope. People grow up in religious like communities and there's like really hot fucking Catholic chicks who wear skirts nearby and they like fantasize about railing them when they're in like high school and none of the girls will talk to them. But a lot of this is like fetish cope, you know? Generally speaking, I'm just sorry, being religious and sexually abstemious is gonna make people worse at sex. Yep.
Have access to before unless they made the commitment, unless they promised to support you and stay with you. And you know who's losing? Women. So I really wanted to talk today about this.
Women stay losing. Good. That's all I need. Good. Perfect. That's all I want. Phenomenal. Excellent. Keep losing. Still losing. Wow. Lamau. Women as an entire fucking gender. The train is crashing. It's derailing. It's going off the goddamn bridge rail and into the lake of nitroglycerin. Oh god. Women are over.